let's kick off with this increasing debate about the stage 3 tax cuts. The government under pressure to, if not dump them, at least tweak them, and the pressure coming from more and more people every day.
Indeed, and today we're seeing the first Liberal come out and suggest that the stage 3 tax cuts, which were of course legislated by the previous Liberal government, might not be in the nation's best interests. Been a lot of criticism for some time saying that the money should be better spent. The $200 billion of stage 3 tax cuts might be better spent on helping nurses and aged care workers and others. I think the Liberals are increasingly worried that the $1 trillion in debt that they left is not going to get paid down with the tax cuts they left as well.
OK, and the Prime Minister appeared to leave some wriggle room at his appearance at the Press Club yesterday to if not axe the cuts, as Lisa says, perhaps tweak them. But he's got a bit of a problem, hasn't he? This election was fought largely on integrity, largely on trust in government. This was a big election promise Labor made, and there'd be a lot of political peril, wouldn't there, for this government, even though they're not a great fan of the stage 3 cuts, clearly, in breaking this promise.
That's right. I was at the Press Club yesterday, and the Prime Minister certainly left a little bit of room there, which journalists were keen to explore. But this is the dilemma. Do we want our Prime Minister to deliver on his promises, or do we want our Prime Minister to actually make decisions that are in the best interest of the nation in the circumstances we find ourselves? The stage 3 tax cuts, of course, were legislated 7 years in advance, pre-COVID, pre-inflation breakout, and pre a lot of problems that we're currently experiencing. So is the job of Prime Minister to manage the economy in the here and now, or deliver on promises made a long time ago? Quite a dilemma.
Hey, Richard, what do you think is going to happen Thursday, Friday with discussions at the Job Summit about wages deals and reform to IR?
Look, I don't think Thursday and Friday will be the end of this by any stretch, but there's clearly a lot of pressure building up in the lead up to the summit for unions and employers to find some common ground. I think the smarter employer groups are worried that if they don't participate in the conversation, they'll just be left behind. And we've seen the first cracks of that emerging today with the big business groups criticising the small business groups for agreeing in principle with the unions on how to simplify and improve the system. So everyone agrees wages should rise, but of course it's only employers that can offer a pay rise. They haven't been doing that for the past decade, and small business, I think, are finding the complexity of the coalition's industrial relations system a bit hard to deal with, and they've been the first to say they're willing to compromise.
OK, watch this space at the end of the week. Very interesting story in the front of the 9 newspapers, in this case the Sydney Morning Herald. Moves happening towards scrapping the COVID isolation period, certainly ahead of that keenly anticipated National Cabinet meeting tomorrow.
Look, the New South Wales Premier has always been enthusiastic about letting individuals take responsibility for COVID. The health practitioners have never been nearly that enthusiastic. And the New South Wales Premier is now basically saying if you don't feel sick, you should be able to go to work. Of course, the problem is COVID spreads whether you feel sick or not. The purpose of isolation isn't to help you. The purpose of isolation is to stop you giving it to other people, particularly vulnerable people. So not surprising that the New South Wales Premier thinks that we should just get on with it, but I don't think he's going to convince many of his colleagues in the short term.
And interestingly, the Health Services Union is calling for the complete scrapping right now of the COVID isolation period. We'll be joined by the National Secretary, Gerard Hayes, very shortly on the show. Just picking up on your final point there, Richard, do you think there is any degree of community appetite for the scrapping of isolation rules altogether?
Look, I don't think so. Well, sorry, there's always been some people that have been enthusiastic about this. I don't think that people want COVID to spread more freely. I think the reason that people might be feeling fatigued, as the Health Services Union have made out, is because their members are running out of sick leave and they don't have enough money. So I think we need to probably open up the conversation about do we have enough sick leave, particularly for people in the sectors that are most exposed to it, and do we need other support payments so that we can financially support people who do need to isolate rather than send sick people off to make other people sick.
Yeah, and those Commonwealth support payments end at the end of September. Richard, thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.